Sun Quan is the founder of the Wu dynasty, and he inherited the regime from his late father and brother. He was much younger than his rivals Cao Cao and Liu Bei, but he enjoyed the longest reign out of the founders of the three kingdoms. He adopted a flexible foreign policy towards them both in order to pursue the greatest interests for his country. Described as a tall man with bright eyes and an oblong face, he was wise and outgoing. He was fond of making jokes and playing tricks, but he also valued the strength of his officers while avoiding their shortcomings. By treating them like his family, he was able to delegate authority to the most suited figures in his early years. This was his primary strength, and served him well in gaining the support of the countrymen, while at the same time drawing in talented people. According to a story In Search of the Supernatural, Lady Wu dreamt about the moon entering her body before she gave birth to Sun Ce. Before she gave birth to Sun Quan, she also had a similar dream about the sun entering her body. The sun and the moon capture the true essence of yin and yang. They are very good signs. My descendants will surely become great men. Sun Quan was born 2 years before the outbreak of the Yellow Turban Rebellion in 182. When his father went away to fight the rebels, he was sent to stay at Shou with his family, but he eventually joined back up at Jiangxia. When he was 8 years old, his father raised an army to fight Dong Zhuo, so he was relocated to Lujian, where his older brother Sun Ce met Zhou Yu. He offered to let the Sun family stay with him in Shu County, and paid respects to Lady Wu as if she was his real mother. The Sun family became acquainted with Zhou Yu, while he became very close friends with Sun Ce. After Sun Jian's death, the family moved to Chua County to mourn him. Lady Wu met her brother Wu Jinghe, who had not yet assumed his appointment from Yuan Shu as administrator over Danyang. He was currently helping Li Yao, who was also stationed at Chua, too afraid to assume his role as inspector of Yang province because of Yuan Shu's presence in the region. When Sun Ce went away to serve Yuan Shu and started his career as a warlord, he ordered Lu Fan to bring his family from Guangling to Wu Jing's home at Danyang. Sun Ce's actions made Li Yao upset, and he felt even more worried after Liu Kang's defeat in 194. He drove Wu Jing and Sun Ben out from Danyang, but Sun Quan and his mother were still stuck there. Songzhi displayed ability and talent in all of his missions, including an instance of protecting Sun Ce's family. As he had been granted a higher status by Ma Midi, he was able to send people to rescue them and relocate them to Fu Ling. Sun Ce defeated Liu Yao the next year, then sent Chen Bao to bring his family back to Danyang. Songzhi was the official who recommended Sun Quan as a Xiaolian to serve in the government. From 13 years old, he grew up serving his brother throughout his conquests over Jiangdong. He was made a county magistrate by the next year, and so was able to scout and recruit local talents. Pan Zhang was a heavy drinker and compulsive gambler who always had to borrow money to pay off his debts. Sun Quan felt he was extraordinary, so sent him on a recruitment drive, whereafter he returned with over 100 men. Sun Quan appointed him as a major of a separate command, but also favoured the faithful and polite Zhou Tai too, so requested for Sun Ce to transfer him to his unit. When Sun Ce campaigned against some Quasi bandits, Sun Quan was left in Chuancheng County with less than 1,000 men. He thoughtlessly hadn't set up any defence posts, so when bandits suddenly attacked, he tried to flee. He became surrounded by bandits slashing at his saddle, where only Zhou Tai rushed to guard him. With his spirits roused, he emboldened the others to fight, and when the bandits finally scattered, Zhou Tai had 12 deep wounds all over his body. In his school days, Sun Quan met Songzhi's nephew Zhu Ran and Sun Ce's 13-year-old house attendant Hu Zong, who was ordered to be his reading mate. Sun Quan continued to rise through the ranks as his brother gave him increasingly important tasks, and his fame was soon reaching that of his father and brother. Still being young and foolhardy, he often embezzled official funds for his personal interests and expected Lu Fan to cover up for him. Lu remained honest, however, by reporting Sun Quan's behaviour to Sun Ce, causing Sun Quan to dislike him. Cao Cao attempted to further reinforce his alliance with Sun Ce by offering his younger brothers Sun Quan and Sun Yi official posts in Xuchang, but they both refused. Sun Ce loved his brother and said he would put his men under Chuan's control in the future, then promoted him to a colonel in 199. By now, Sun Quan had taken his mother's advice to marry Lady Shi, who was from a noteworthy family in Quaji. In the year 200, he wanted to take Lady Shou as his concubine, so told Lady Shi to lower her status in order to accommodate. She died seemingly soon after at a relatively young age, supposedly of grief. Lady Shou took up the new responsibilities as adoptive mother to Sun Quan's firstborn, Sun Deng, who was actually born to another mother of lowly status. Quan also noticed the beauty of Lady Bu and favoured her greatly, so she became another concubine. He went on to follow his brother to conquer Lu Xiang and Yu Zhang, but Sun Ce was assassinated shortly after during a hunt in the year 200. On his deathbed, Sun Ce knew his son was still too young to be an heir, so he entrusted the 18-year-old Sun Quan to succeed him under Zhang Zhao's guidance. If Zhongmu turns out to be incompetent, you may replace him. If there is no way to overcome the difficulties, you can retreat back west where you'll have no worries. Zhang Zhao sent letters throughout their domain for all the key holders to perform their duties as before, then wrote his report and sent it to the Han central government. Zhang Hong had been sent there earlier as a liaison, so he requested that Cao Cao commission Sun Quan as general who attacks barbarians. Cao agreed, then sent Zhang Hong back to monitor Sun Quan's activities, but he remained ever loyal to Sun. Central Protector of the army Zhou Yu rushed back to Wu in order to attend Sun Ce's funeral. He saw special qualities in Sun Quan, so chose to stay and serve him, then proceeded to assist the young man in overseeing day-to-day affairs. When Lu Su arrived in Wu, Zhou Yu told him, "Not only do lords choose their subjects, but their subjects also choose their lords. Sun Quan welcomes and respects people of virtue and talent, so has recruited many extraordinary people. I once heard a saying in the past, the successor to the Liu clan's empire will rise in the southeast. As you can see, these events are already in motion." Quan was still mourning so much that he couldn't stop crying, but Zhang Zhao got him to put on his military uniform, get onto horseback, then inspect the troops as they lined up in formation. The generals gathered to accept his leadership and pledged themselves to the newly appointed general who attacks barbarians. Cheng Pu was the eldest of all the senior military officers and travelled around the territories to attack those who refused to submit to his new lord. Sun Ben and Sun Fu were particularly uneasy about the young Sun Quan being named heir, both being his elder, while other clansmen also considered their options. Sun Jing's eldest son Sun Gao, or Hao, was older than both Sun Ce and Quan. While in charge of the garrison at Wu Cheng, he began organising his troops, which raised suspicions he was aiming for Kuaji. Yu Fan ensured the area was well defended in order to ward off Sun Gao's attacks and ensured the officials remained loyal. Sun Gao retreated, and his career seems to have come to an end. He was likely forced back to his home with Sun Jing, who, as before, tended to the family tombs and defended the villages he grew up in. Lady Wu gave as much assistance as she could to her son in political and military affairs, but she was still worried that he was too young. Dongxi once gave a speech to support her, which was applauded by many. While the good government and virtue of Sun Ce has attracted the people, Lord Sun Quan can build on these foundations. Zhang Zhao can take care of internal affairs, while others like me can serve as claws and teeth. Sun Quan appointed Zhang Zhao as his chief clerk, to perform the same duties as he did for Sun Ce. Hu Zong was made a staff officer in charge of finances, and Zhu Xi was quickly appointed to be Wu Commandery's administrator. Later on, Sun Quan became unhappy with Zhu Xi, but could not bring himself to scold him. Zhu Gejin noticed the frustrations and figured out why, then used an indirect method to resolve the problem. Zhu Xi was allowed to enter semi-retirement by Sun Quan, but he maintained his service for decades. An old subordinate of Liu Yao's, Sun Shao, came to advise Sun Quan to pay tribute and swear allegiance to Emperor Xian. Sun Quan took the advice, and although Sun Shao went on to serve as the first Chancellor of Wu, there is very little information recorded about him. Zhou Tai was currently an acting county chief in Yuzhang, and used the residents under his control to fund his army's expense. Sun Quan appointed Zhu Ran as the chief of Shayin County, then gave him further authority over 5 surrounding counties with over 2,000 soldiers. Also by now, Pan Zhang had exterminated Huangzu's raiding parties, and his reputation prevented any more from appearing from across the Yangtze. After he also suppressed an inland revolt, he was summoned to Sun Quan's domain to be further promoted. Pan had killed many wealthy officials and soldiers among his troops and seized their property for himself. When people reported this to Sun Quan, he didn't pursue the matter. Pan Zhang led an extravagant lifestyle with a quality of items and clothing far exceeding his rank and status, but his lawlessness was tolerated due to his powerful service. Many of Sun Tzu's old subordinates still thought Sun Quan was too young, however, especially Shou. As administrator over Liu Jiang, he defected to Cao Cao, but Sun Quan wrote a list of his crimes to Cao before leading his own troops to regain control. He swiftly defeated him, then merged Li's 30,000 troops into his own army. With Zhang Zhao's military assistance, Sun Quan was able to gain control over the unstable Jiangdong regime left behind by his brother. Whenever Sun Quan went into battle, he left Zhang Zhao behind to manage state affairs, but the latter also occasionally led troops to suppress uprisings. With officers like Wang Gai, Dong Shi, and Jiangxia leading separate forces to attack the rebels, he was able to gradually pacify some Shan tribes and slowly win over their trust. He listened carefully to his mother's encouraging words, while greatly trusting Zhang Zhao and Zhang Hong with civilian affairs. Zhou Yu, Cheng Pu, and Lu Fan dealt with the important military issues, while Sun Quan sought out talented young men to serve as his personal advisors. Lu Su, Zhu Gejin, Lu Xun, Bu Ji, Gu Yong, Shi Yi, Yan Jun, Xu Cheng, and Zhu Huan were among the most noteworthy of his new subordinates. By now, Sun Quan was known for swiftly reacting to events, but for decades to come, his leadership was characterized by his ability to find men of talent and entrust important matters to them. Around 202, Cao Cao demanded that Sun Quan sends one of his sons to the imperial capital to ensure his loyalty, and his subordinates could not come to a decision. Sun Quan didn't want to agree to the terms, so had another meeting, but only invited his mother and Zhou Yu this time. Shou agreed not to send Sun Deng away, while Lady Wu endorsed him and asked Chuan to treat him like an elder brother. Chuan heeded Shou's advice, but Lady Wu passed away that very same year. For the next several years, Sun Quan was largely interested in expanding against the Shan hill tribes in order to ensure the safety of his people. Cao Cao had secretly instructed Fei Zhan to instigate the Shan, so Sun Quan sent Lu Xun to attack him. Chuan launched numerous campaigns against the Shan, and by 203 he had achieved several successes and gained reasonable control over his territories, so Lu Su proposed an idea. According to the plan, Sun Quan would take Jing from Li Biao, then use the Yangtze as a barrier to ward off attacks from Cao Cao. The first obstacle on Sun Quan's path was Jiangxia Commandery, which served as the eastern gateway into Jing and was famous for being the cradle of the Huang clan. Sun Quan held a personal stake in the campaign because its defender, Wang Zu, was the man responsible for his father's death 12 years ago. Sun Quan prepared 2 boxes for containing the heads of Wang Zu and Su Fei. In spring of 203, he appointed Ling Tao as the leader of the vanguard fleet and ordered him to mobilize towards Jiangxia first. Sun Quan kept the larger ships for himself for a slower advance, and he clashed with Wang Zu's army at Xiaku. The battle was inconclusive, as Sun Quan was unable to capture Jiangxia after Wang Zu had retreated. Even though Gan Ning had saved Wang Zu's life at a critical moment in the battle, he was unappreciative of his effort because of his background as a pirate. Sun Quan eventually withdrew his troops to deal with the Shan tribes who constantly raided his lands, while Gan took Su Fei's advice and defected over to his side, bringing with him intelligence on Wang Zu's navy. In the years following Xiaku, Sun Quan continued to engage Wang Zu in battles from time to time. He made war on him twice in 203, but none of them were conclusive or of large scale, as Sun Quan was also busy putting down rebellions in his territory. He conquered the Shan fortress in Matun and Baodun in 206, where he captured more than 10,000 men. Then in the spring of 208, Gan Ning suggested to prepare a full assault on Jiangxia. He pointed out that Wang Zu was old and feeble and hadn't replenished his arsenal in quite a while, but Zhang Zhao objected and said, "The territories in Wu have not yet been completely pacified. If we proceed with this campaign, I'm afraid there will be chaos." Gan Ning responded, "Our Lord has entrusted responsibilities to you as if you were Xiao He. If you can't even be confident that there won't be chaos under your watch, how can you expect to embody him?" Sun Quan ignored Zhang Zhao and put Gan Ning in charge of planning and leading the campaign, then assigned Ling Tong to lead the vanguard and Lu Meng to be the naval commandant. After some lengthy fighting, Sun Quan realized Wang Zu's navy was not as rusty as he thought, but Ling Tong and Dong Shi managed to break through. Jiangxia was captured while Huangzu attempted to flee, but he met his end at the hands of Fengzi. His head was specifically requested by Sun Quan to be placed inside a container for examination, and after receiving it, he presented it as a sacrifice at Sun Jian's temple.